Thank you, Kathy, and thank you to our previous two speakers, and of course, to all the organizers of the conference. It's very interesting being the third speaker on a panel. We were each given this topic, Get Enlightenment, Help Save All Beings. But each one of us is a different human being. So each one of us has a different take on what that means. And maybe I'll start by saying that we need to be a little careful in our practice. Sometimes, especially new people in practice, believe that we're practicing to become something that we see in other people. Like when I first met Zen Master Soeng, he was a very, very powerful, charismatic man. And for most of us in those early days, we thought, well, we need to be like him. But that's a mistake. What Buddhism and Zen teach us is we need to become completely ourselves. And if you look at all the speakers in this conference, the teachers, everyone, each one is different. So each take is a different take on the same reality. What am I? That is our fundamental Zen question. So I'm going to break down this question of get enlightenment, help all beings into formal practice and everyday life practice. Because of course you don't do something to get something. Expressing ourselves is already it. So again, as I say, it's very personal to each person. So when I think back on my own life, I have a very important memory. I was about 9 years old, and I lived in this suburban neighborhood outside of New York City. And we had this big garage. And I was standing in the garage. I have no idea why I was there. But I distinctly remember the sights in this garage. And I had this thought that I'd never had anything like before. I said, what if this whole universe, the whole experience of being alive, is nothing more than a dream of a bear? Now, this is a 9-year-old's mind who's thinking of this bear out in the wilderness, who's having a dream. And that dream could be our life. Now, of course, where does that come from? But you know what? None of us know that that's not true. Not one of us could prove to me that our existence is not the dream that some bear is having in the wilderness. We don't know. Zen Master Soeng taught us that very clearly. Don't know mind is the basis of our practice. And that we use that don't know mind in our formal practice and in our everyday life practice. That moment actually did change my life. I had never had a thought like that before. Move ahead 4 or 5 years, and I'm at a big gathering with a bunch of friends from a Jewish youth group that I was a part of. And I see myself walking around saying to everybody, I just want to know who I am. Now, of course, every teenager at some point or another has this thought, who am I? How do I fit in this world? What is there for me to do? For many teenagers, that's a step, and then they just get folded back into regular everyday consciousness and society. But every life is unique, and everything happens in a particular moment, in a particular time. And when I was 15 years old, the society in the United States was going through a vast uproar and tumult. We were fighting in a war in Vietnam. that many people of my generation didn't want to fight. And there were people in our society, African American people, women people, if you could say that, who were starting to discover that all the power was held in a very few people's hands. And women wanted the ability to express themselves fully and have the same rights as men. Same thing happened for African American folks who felt and saw that their lives were very limited by what society allowed. So just like Zen Master Soeng, who saw his country after World War II, and he thought, this is terrible. And he shaved his head and went to the temple and did his retreat. Well, I don't have the karma of being a monastic. So I'm a lay person. I never wanted to shave my head and go to the mountains. I always wanted to be part of the world we live in. And I wanted to practice. So this get enlightenment side, this means dedicating our lives to great doubt and to our practice. Being a lay person, it can be easy to think, oh, well, I'll go to the temple sometimes and I'll do some meditation and I'll do some together action with people. And then I'll go out in my life and I'll forget about what I do in the temple. I'll forget about my practice. I'll just be with my friends. I'll have my job. I'll be with my family. And that will be my life. And there are two parts of my life. But if you're a true Zen practitioner, there are no two parts of your life. Everything is, Zen Master Bonhe said, everything is already connected. Everything is already it. And as she said, language is kind of complicated, but I never really liked the phrase, everything has Buddha nature. To me, I think the translation would be better said, everything is Buddha nature. Everything is a manifestation of Buddha nature, just in this moment. That's very easy to say. That's very difficult to live. So we practice. We practice. Our practice is the foundation of our life. If you're going to be a Zen practitioner, you must practice. And Zen means meditation. So sitting quietly is the center point of our practice. It's very easy to forget about that when we get lost in our lives. But that specific practice has to be at the center of our lives. Not just sitting, chanting, bowing, having interviews with the teacher, doing your daily practice, doing retreat practice. For many lay people, it's very difficult to take 3 days and do a weekend retreat. But if we don't do that, we're just dancing along the surface. And if you really want to get enlightenment and help all beings, you have to do your own work. Our minds are confused. We're lost in a dream. Our consciousness is programmed by the conditions of our lives. Each one of us is born into a particular moment of time and space. We're born into very particular families at a very particular time with very different karmic situations. Some families are rich, some families are poor. Some families have many children, some families have no children. Each thing in our life creates who we become. Our practice, our formal practice, helps us deconstruct that, to loosen the weave of the tapestry and allow that Buddha nature to more directly and more spontaneously and alive express itself. In some ways, our job in life is to get out of the way. Get Jeff out of the way so Zen Master Bonsang can express himself. Get your idea out of the way and become your true self. In some of the Soto Zen schools, when they chant the 4 great vows, they chant, for the 3rd vow, they chant, Dharma gates are endless. We vow to enter them all. That's the prescription for practice in your everyday life. Each moment opens the door of the Dharma. Our job is to walk into it and then ask, which our direction is so clear, how can I help this world? What can I do? On some levels, it's very simple. Sometimes we just smile. Sometimes if somebody drops something, we reach down and pick it up for them. But also sometimes somebody's mind is not correct. And sometimes we need to stand in front of them and say no. Sometimes we need to use our anger to make the world correct. So we're not only trying to be nice people, we're trying to include all of what a human being has and use it in the appropriate way. I know we've all gone over, and I'm going over a little bit too much time, but I want to get one more point in, and I'll try to do it briefly. For lay people, our livelihood is a very important way that we help this world. How can we choose a life that supports our practice and supports this world? And I want to just say 2 things about myself. When I first started practicing, I was practicing a lot. We were doing retreats every weekend and morning and evening practice. I was living at the Zen Center, but I needed to work. And I grew up in an intellectual family where basically, I like to say my father was so much not physically adept that when he would try to put away an extension cord, he would get frustrated and he would throw it down in anger. So nobody taught me how to do anything with my hands. So when I became a practitioner, I realized it was important to go against what I was good at. And I chose a livelihood where I had to have beginner's mind, and I became a carpenter. And I did that job for about 10 years in my 20s. And I have to say, I was not the best carpenter on the crew. But interestingly, I was the guy that the boss wanted next to him to hand him things and calm him down. But I struggled a lot as a carpenter. A lot of my self-esteem would get hit because I wasn't that good. So many people were better than me. I'd be bending nails and cutting boards too short, but I stuck with it. And I learned so much about myself because I persevered. So we've been taught that it takes 3 things to practice Zen. It takes great question, which I talked about earlier about my wondering about what life was really about. And then it takes great effort and great courage. We have to do it. We have to face up to the difficulties of our lives. Usually our small mind wants to make things easy, but our practice mind knows we have to go into what's difficult. So great effort is the midpoint. And the third is great faith in Buddha nature, great faith in our ability to express Buddha in this very moment. So in my 30s, I changed my work and I became a psychotherapist. And in psychotherapy, I found a way to bring Zen from the Zen Center out into the world. Now in 2020, meditation is very popular in the United States. Everybody knows about it and everybody has tried it. But back in 1981, 1982, and 1983, it wasn't so popular and it wasn't so well known. But I was able to bring out meditation to people. I was able to take a form of practice of teaching people who would never come to a Zen center meditation and also help them understand their minds, to untangle their minds and allow themselves to get a taste of their own Buddha nature and express it in the world. If we can give birth to another Buddha, the world is better off. So I just want to close with one small statement. I talked about Dharma gates are endless. We vow to enter them all. When we enter the Dharma gate, we vow with our Bodhisattva vow to help all beings. If my intention in every moment of my life is to make things better, not just for me, of course for me, but for everyone involved, if we can make it into a win-win situation where your life is enhanced and my life is enhanced and the planet is enhanced and love, peace, and compassion is spread through the world, then we've done our job. We've attained enlightenment, we've given it away, and the world is a better place. That's our job as bodhisattvas. That's our job as Zen practitioners. So thank you all very much for listening, and thank you all for your practice.